I'm Ivonne Hamoud, registered social worker and owner of New Moon Counseling. But out of the office, I'm a mom, wife, daughter, sister, and friend. Join me each week as I sit with a special guest to discuss everyday things that impact our mental health. We'll be chatting about everything from mental health and relationships to media and current events, as well as personal experiences and reflections, all in the hopes of normalizing our humanness and helping you see that you're not alone. This is Outside the Therapy Room. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Outside the Therapy Room and to our very last episode of season 1. Today, it's just me doing a solo episode, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the mental load of being the strong one. I'm going to jump right into it. Who is the strong one? I'm sure the strong one is either yourself or somebody that you know. And it oftentimes can be a caregiver, somebody who fixes things, a planner, a listener, a problem solver in the family or in your friend group or even in your work circles. And a lot of the time, these individuals who are labeled as the strong one are often praised for their resilience, or they're often praised by saying, like, I don't know how you do it. You do so much, and I just don't even understand how you could get all of those things done. And so there's a lot of praise that comes to the strong one, but it can definitely be a difficult spot to be in. A lot of the times, being the strong one often is developed through family dynamics, through cultural expectations, or even through internalized messages that we can receive about strength and worthiness. In our previous episode, we talked a little bit about feeling like we are not worthy of taking a break or taking rest, and our worth can kind of come from this need to be productive all the time. And so this is similar to that. Even in society, we can sometimes be complimented for being superhuman and doing all of these things, and our worth can eventually be tied to that, where we feel a strong sense of pride from being the person who can carry everything on. But again, it comes with its challenges. It's not attainable for a long period of time. We can often end up burning out. And I wanted to share a little bit of my experience. A couple of weeks ago, my dad was admitted to the hospital. He had a stroke, and that was very scary. I'm sure all of you know I immigrated here from Peru, so my parents' English is not their first language. And so I've been run to the hospital to be able to translate and receive the information that the doctors were sharing. And in that role that I took on as the eldest daughter, there was a lot of other work that needed to be done, like communicating with the family, translating, making sure that I'm asking my parents the correct questions. So I know all about the symptoms that came from weeks before to be able to communicate that to the doctor. And during that time, that happened late at night. I remember getting the call and not wanting to worry my own kids, and so put them to sleep at their time. And then I rushed to the hospital, got that information because I know I'm often the one that takes on all of these responsibilities and these roles. I was trying to do better, and I communicated with my brothers and kind of delegated some things to them. They live in Toronto. I told them to please come here, that I needed their help. I didn't want our dad staying alone. He was admitted to the hospital for 5 days. Didn't want him to be alone. My mom's also a caretaker of my grandma. And so I knew that in some ways she was going to need help that I wasn't going to be able to provide. And I was doing a lot of that, coming home, taking care of my family. We were getting ready for a trip, going to work, taking care of my clients, running the business, answering emails, doing all of these things. And I felt the strong need to be there with my dad. And so if I had a break for work, I would run to the hospital and just hang out with him a little bit while we awaited news. And while I think it was like the third day, and while I was sharing like updates with my aunt, she stopped me and said, "Okay, that's great. Glad your dad is doing well, but how are you?" And that was the first time somebody had asked me how I was. And so, of course, that was met with like tears and crying. And I was like, oh, like I'm tired. I'm exhausted. This is emotionally exhausting. I haven't really had time to process. don't want to scare the kids, doing all of this, but my dad is fine. And I kept saying, like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just sharing this information. And then she reminded me, and she's like, more than anybody how important it is to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And I think in that moment, I was like, oh shit, what I always say to my clients is being repeated back to me here, and I need to listen and take my own advice. And so again, thankfully, everything was good with my dad. He was doing really, really well. And I think, with everyone's permission and everyone's encouragement for me to just like, I don't need to be there all the time. I was able to kind of take some of that space and be able to get that support that I needed. But I did feel like I needed to be the strong one. I needed to be the strong one for my mom. I needed to be the strong one for my dad. I needed to be the strong one for my kids who were a little scared about what was going on with grandpa. Like, I needed to be all of these things, but nobody forced me to be that. And so I really, needed to kind of notice the emotional labor that was taking on, as well as like the physical and mental load. I was tired. I was exhausted being the caretaker for my dad and trying to, make sure my mom's okay. And then like all of these things felt really hard during that time. And I'm really happy that I had the people around me to kind of remind me to take care of myself. I know that in some families, it's not like that. And so I wanted to talk a little bit again about like the mental load that being the strong one can take. And maybe in your situation, if you are listening to this and you are also the strong one in your family, like it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be in this caretaker role. It can be that you're, dealing with your own mental health struggles while still taking care of everything else, whether that's work, family, extended family, kids, whatever it could be. It can sometimes be a lot. And we are putting on this front like we are strong and have it all together, but deep down inside, we might be, wanting somebody to save us. And so the emotional labor is invisible. We are pretending, or not even pretending, we're trying maybe to pretend to ourselves that we are actually strong. And we're, maybe holding space for other people without that being reciprocated. And in some situations, yeah, that's needed. But in others, it's also important that we have somebody to hold space for us. And so while you are holding space for other people, they might not be the ones to be able to reciprocate that, but being able to have somebody that you can rely on, that you can lean on, so that you can have that space for validation and even just to debrief or to allow your emotions to exist in a safe space with a safe person. Sometimes the invisible emotional labor also includes anticipating needs and managing crisis really quickly. And that was something that I felt I had to do. And that may be something that you've experienced as well in your life, having to anticipate the needs of your kids or situations at work. Suppressing personal needs to avoid burdening others. A lot of the times when we're suppressing our own personal needs and there isn't anyone around us to be able to give us the safe space to feel those things, then it can be really isolating, and we're suppressing a lot of these needs that we have that we don't feel comfortable sharing with other people because we don't want to burden them. And again, there is this mentality where we can take a lot of pride in that by saying like, oh, I'm super independent. I can meet my own needs. I don't need to rely on anyone else. But as humans, we are strive for connection. We are driven by connection and community. And so, even though you may be the strong one, you may be really independent, you still need support. And so being able to rely on somebody to communicate, hey, I'm needing to vent about the situation, or I'm really needing you to remind me to eat because I haven't eaten and I'm not in the mental space to be able to recognize when I need to eat. So being able to kind of communicate that with other people. It also takes a psychological toll. You can become chronically fatigued or irritable. You can end up being burnt out, resentment, emotional numbness, especially in situations where you are having to take on a lot of the emotional needs for other people, but your emotions are being suppressed. Sometimes the best way to get through those situations is to numb our own emotions. The other thing that can happen is isolation. We might feel really, really isolated. We might say, everyone assumes that I'm fine, and so therefore no one is checking on me. But to open up the space to get out of being the strong one feels too risky. And so we might end up feeling really isolated and like we're not being seen, we're not being heard. And that can lead to a lot of loneliness. Even when we are surrounded by people, we can still feel a strong sense of loneliness. There's also guilt and identity conflict. There may be guilt for setting boundaries or asking for help, or an identity crisis when you're not able to be the strong one anymore. When you have been praised for being the strong one, for always being the trooper, or always, that's always been something that other people have complimented you on. When we start feeling like we aren't strong anymore, there is that identity crisis that happens of, what am I going to be if I'm not the strong one? What does that mean for me? It can be really, really upsetting to know that this part of your identity is now you're losing it or you're not going to be that anymore. And so there is a lot of this guilt that can come from that, like we're letting somebody down or ourselves down, but also the guilt for setting boundaries and asking for help that can feel super uncomfortable for some folks who are the strong ones in their family. When you are able to acknowledge that you are the strong one, when you're able to notice some of the things that I mentioned above about, how that mental load can look like, the best way to move from that is to be able to validate your emotions. I am a broken record. I'm pretty sure in every episode we've talked about being compassionate with yourself, but that's necessary in order for us to be able to move through our emotions. When we are judgmental towards our emotions and how we are feeling, that doesn't help us. That wouldn't help our friend. If a friend came to you and said, "Oh, you're feeling sad again? My God, get over it." That wouldn't feel super great. We probably wouldn't feel comfortable coming up to that friend and being vulnerable and telling them how we feel. So it's really important that you're validating your emotions, that you're saying it's okay for me to feel exhausted. It's okay for me to be feeling lonely and isolated because this is who I present in the world. I present as a strong one. And so I need to communicate if I'm needing support. And you're also not weak for being overwhelmed. There are so many things that you are juggling around you in order to keep the people that you love safe, in order to keep yourself safe. And even though a lot of those things may be positive things, they can still be overwhelming. And the other thing is that strength is not about being invincible. You are a human. You are not Superman. It's about being able to understand your humanness and recognize that as humans, we require support and community. So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to rest. It's okay to cry if that's the way that your body needs to release the emotions. It's okay to say, I can't really hold this for you today. Like, let's talk about it tomorrow. You don't need to earn love or worth through sacrifices that you make. And again, the airplane analogy, if the mask comes down from the plane, you put it on yourself before you put it on others. If it's really important to you to be that caretaker, to be able to support other people through what they're going through, you can't do that in your best ability if you're so overwhelmed that it negatively impacts your mental health. You need to be able to fill your cup in order to be able to fill others' cups as well. And so making sure that you're validating yourself, making sure that you are being compassionate to yourself and how you're feeling. If you have the space for reflection or for curiosity as to where this part of being the strong one comes from, then you can definitely do that just to have a little bit more understanding as to where this part was developed. But those are going to be having those validations, compassion, setting some of those boundaries with yourself are going to be the things that are going to be able to help you the most. You can't heal others when you're neglecting yourself. And over time, this neglection is going to manifest as exhaustion, resentment, and it can even manifest as physical illness. You could get really sick. Some other things that can happen, though, is when we are feeling really tired and we are neglecting our own emotions, you might find yourself losing your patience on a loved one, maybe snapping at them. You might withdraw from your relationships, or, like I said, feel this strong sense of loneliness, even though you're surrounded by people. And it's not because you're weak or you're failing in any way. It's just because you're human. And humans are not meant to bear the weight of the world or the situation alone. That's, again, I'm being a broken record today, but this is why community and connection is so important. So, the secret cost of being the strong one is that it leaves little room for your needs, your own struggles, and your own humanity. And it's not selfish to prioritize yourself, it's actually extremely necessary. And so, like I mentioned, if you have somebody in your life that you're able and feel comfortable communicating some of these struggles with, then talk to them. Delegate some tasks, communicate to the people around you how they can support you when you are needing that support, or even reflecting with yourself about what it is that you need in certain situations. How do you need rest? How do you need support? What is the best way for you to get that support in a way that feels easier to accept? For us strong ones, sometimes certain help doesn't really feel supportive. What can feel supportive to one person, for example, somebody purchasing groceries for a family, that may feel really supportive for them. For others, it may be, hey, I just need a listening ear. Or, invite me out to get a full distraction and do something fun. In other cases, it could be, having those reminders of like, hey, have you eaten today? Here's some food. So really trying to reflect on what it is that you need when you are wanting to be taken care of by other people. So if you are curious as to how you became the strong one, there are some questions that I will leave you with to reflect. So you can reflect by asking yourself, where did I learn that I had to be the strong one? Did it come from a family dynamic? Did it come from a cultural expectation? Is it something that I myself have just focused on as a sense of, meeting that sense of self-worth? Another question is, what does it cost me to carry this role alone? This is a tough question because it's one that we really need to look at and understand. What is the cost of being the strong one? What has happened to me while I was the strong one for a family member? And the last question is, what would it feel like to soften, even just a little bit, instead of constantly being strong and rigid? What would it be like to be soft and flexible? How does that feel, even just asking yourself that question? Does that feel terrifying, or is there a sense of relief that comes from asking yourself and imagining yourself in that space? Try receiving. Say yes when someone offers you help. And if it's not the kind of help that you're looking for, then you can say, yes, I would like your help, but can you do this instead to help me? You can also journal or speak aloud one thing you wish somebody would ask you. When we are in those really, really tough moments, when we are constantly being the strong ones and feeling exhausted by it, we might wish that somebody would find us out. We might wish that somebody would notice the small little hints that we're giving, that we are exhausted and that we are tired, or that it's really not something we want to do. So journal it, write it somewhere, say it out loud what you wish somebody would ask you in that moment. And if, again, there's a safe space and a safe person for you to do that with, then tell them. Ask them to communicate on your behalf to other people so that they're able to kind of provide you that support if it feels too difficult to ask yourself. Well, that is all I'm going to leave you with. I hope that this episode was helpful. I do feel like I was a little bit all over the place, and I'm very uncomfortable sharing things about my own life, but hopefully my example of a recent experience that we had kind of shows some humanness and normalizes situations that you may be in as well. So thank you so much for tuning in. This was a very quick, short episode. And I also want to say thank you so much for listening to our first season. I'm going to have a little mini reflection as to how our first season was for me. And hopefully we will see you back here for season 2. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you for listening to Outside the Therapy Room. This podcast is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you reside in Ontario and are interested in working with one of our therapists, please visit our website in the show notes. If you reside outside of Ontario, a quick Google search or search through Psychology Today will help you find a therapist near you.